You can do Nayania Baria, Nayania Manania, Manania. You can do Nayania Baria, Nayania Manania.
From the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, this is the Cuppa and A Yarn podcast.
Yaama, and welcome to our brand new podcast, A Cuppa and A Yarn, brought to you by the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council. I'm Michelle Aleksandrovics-Lovegrove, and it's really great to have you listening in. We know there are plenty of podcasts out there to choose from. The fact that you chose ours means the world to us. I really hope you enjoy this episode because it was a lot of fun to put together. Our first guest is the inspiring doyen of Australian Rugby Union through a golden era in the early 80s when the Wallabies were just about unbeatable. What we wouldn't give for that type of reputation in this World Cup year, hey? His name is Mark Ella, and in many ways his reputation speaks for itself. He was a schoolboy prodigy who pretty quickly found himself in a Wallabies jumper, and he made an instant impression. He captained them 10 times, and most agreed he was the world's best player of his generation. Some say he's one of the greatest rugby players of all time. Not too bad for a bloke who played just 25 tests before he called it quits. We'll explore the reasons why in this fascinating yarn. Mark's led a very interesting life, but he never lost his sense of community and his connection to his mob. He's an inspiration to so many people. I really do hope you enjoyed this first episode of A Cuppa and A Yarn with the brilliant Mark Ella. Welcome, Mark Ella, to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
And thank you very much for being so gracious as to come trucking into downtown Parramatta on a very cold winter's morning in Sydney.
Oh, I just love Parramatta. I couldn't wait to be here.
Really?
Yeah. No, it's a long way. Living at La Perouse, we never ever used to come out this far. It was too far to go.
Yeah, totally. Well, you wouldn't, would you?
No.
What would it take? An hour and a bit?
Yeah, probably even a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, exactly. But you're up on the central coast of New South Wales now.
Yes, that's right. God's country.
Is it?
It's nice and quiet.
So you've come from a very quiet, beautiful atmosphere into downtown Parramatta, which for any listeners who aren't aware, it's Western Sydney. It's geographically the centre of Sydney, and it is absolutely booming. It's a burgeoning place right
which
now.
is great because half of my family do actually live out in this part of the world. My older sisters have lived at Mount Druitt and Blacktown, all over this part of the world. I guess I've always sort of stayed on the coast. Anywhere 15, 20 minutes, west of the coastline, I start to get a little bit nervous. So, I don't tend to come out this way too much these days.
Is that because you need a fast getaway by sea, or what's that about?
Yeah, we're saltwater people, so it's just an excuse. But I just love growing up at La Perouse, and just it's a lifestyle that I've grown accustomed to, and I'll never move too far away from the coastline.
So were you born at La Perouse or nearby, weren't you?
Well, we were born obviously in the hospital at
Matraville, was it?
No, not at Matraville. In town, in Crown Street.
Oh, Crown Street Women's Hospital.
Yeah, Women's Hospital. I think most of the family were born there. Something we'll never forget.
Being born.
I've been such a part of a wonderful, crazy family.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting you saying, you get a bit nervous if you're too far away from the coast. And one of the things that I did want to ask you, but it's probably not just about land either, it's a question that we sort of like to ask people when I yarn with them, is what does land mean to you? But what does the ocean mean to you? Clearly a lot.
Well, the ocean does, because, Dad was a net fisherman. So for 6-7 months of the year, Glenn, Gary and I in particular, we would have been about 7-8 years old. We used to go and, Dad would sit on the boat half asleep, and when the mullet came or the schools of bream, my uncle would whistle out, and then Glenn, Gary and I would race down to grab one side of the net, and then Dad would row the boat around with my uncle, and they'd pull in the other side of the net, and So everything I've done, even in summer, we used to dive off the the bridge at La Perouse, when the tourists used to come for 1 or 2 cent coins, 5 cent pieces, just to get enough for fish and chips for lunch for us. So everything that we did, my family, my brothers and I in particular, was always around the ocean.
Unless it was on unless it was on a football field, of course.
Unless it was a football field, but again, the football field wasn't far away from the ocean either.
Do you have any time to fish anymore? Do you throw a rod out?
I used to. I've had boats most of my life. I must admit, I haven't had one for about the last 5 or 6 years. My wife keeps on asking me, when are you going to buy a boat? When are you going to buy a boat?
You're good.
And I'm getting around to it. I probably haven't thrown the hook into the water for about at least a year and a half. So, I've got to start moving my backside and get back fishing again.
So if you bought a boat, what would it be?
I've had indoor boats and outdoor boats, something that obviously can do both. I like fishing, I guess, in the lakes, for bream and flathead, and then when you go outside, snapper and other types of fish. So.
Yeah. Well, you should get to and get that boat happening for spring. That'd be nice, eh?
Yeah, it'd be nice. Things are not cheap these days.
No, well,
and
that's
unfortunately,
right.
I've got a taste for boats and fishing rods and things that are probably far too expensive. I can't afford them anymore. Anyway,
tell me about it. Down my home, South Australia, we have rivers and lakes. So in Nuttingeri country, and when I go home, for some reason, I inherited the crown of the fishing aunt, right? And we'd fish on the Murray too. And so my nieces and nephews, they all live right there on the lake, and no one takes them fishing. It's such a shame. So when I come down for a holiday, Auntie Michelle. So we go out, but no one's got a boat. So it's all just off the beach or off the pier or, nets, put them out overnight, for yabbies and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's just fantastic. So, yeah. So you should be the fishing uncle. You're back in Lapa quite a bit, aren't you?
Yeah, well, we used to be, our nickname, Glengarry and I, was nicknamed Mullet.
Yeah.
Because of obviously eating, we used to eat mullet, we used to fry it, bake it, grill it, steam
mullet
it, everything. We ate that for probably six months of the year when the season was going, because obviously with a big family, eating fish was a natural thing for us to do.
Yeah, and talking about that family, you're one of 12, aren't you?
Yes, I'm one of seven boys and 5 sisters.
Where do you fall in the line?
Would you believe my twin brother Glenn and I fall right in the middle? So I've got 4 older sisters and an older brother, then Glenn and I, then I've got 4 younger brothers and a younger sister, Marcia. So we're right in the middle.
Wow. The middle children.
Yes.
They talk about middle children sometimes needing to be high achievers so they can be noticed. Do you think that's what happened to you?
No, we were fighting amongst ourselves. That's why we achieved so much.
What was it like having, so many siblings growing up? I mean, it sounds pretty idyllic, but I'm sure, 12 kids, it's not easy.
It wasn't that hard. I guess when my sisters got a little bit older, they were probably, the mum booted them out or they got married. So I spent a lot of my childhood probably with my 6 brothers and my sister Marcia. So Marcia had a room to herself. Mum and Dad had a room to themselves. We spent the first 5 or 6 years on a mattress in Mum and Dad's room until my older sisters moved out. And then there were 3 bunk beds in the back room, and that's where the boys slept. We didn't have room for clothing, cupboards, anything like that. There were just 3 beds, and everything was under the beds. But it was you never complained because you didn't know any different. Everything we were doing was just natural. And but when it used to rain, we had holes in the roof because we had tin roofs. We used to move the bunk beds around, not that there was that much room. We were almost together when it rained.
Strategically placed buckets, all of that.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I know that. I know that too. Yeah. So, but it's about family though. So, I mean, it sounds to me that you had a place to sleep. You had a loving family. You certainly ate a lot of fresh fish.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of other things are perhaps unnecessary that people are used to these days.
Yeah,
you know.
it was an ideal growing up. I mean, we were one street off the mission. So we had the Leicesters one side of us. They had about 7 or 8 kids. We had the Stewards. They had about 7 or 8 kids. The Simons across the road, they had 9 children. We had the Stewards or the Leicesters right next door to us. So whilst we weren't technically on the mission, within the 5 houses, there would have been probably 30, maybe 40 children.
Yeah.
So it was a great way to grow up, because when everybody said, hey, let's have a game of touch football, there was 20 aside. Let's play marbles. There was everywhere. So everything in the early days was competitive. Naturally, it was sort of we wanted to be the best, and we always had opportunities to test our ability against our next door neighbours.
Do you think that sort of atmosphere you were saying, 20 aside, if someone wanted to kick a ball around, was that how you sort of moved into rugby?
That sort of melded all of us. I mean, my older brother played for South Sydney. Paul Simon across the road, he played representative football. Charlie Lester next door played Australian schoolboy rugby with us. So, Marcia played represented Australia at netball. So, out of that little area, we achieved a lot, and I think it was all because of our growing up.
Now, I read that you were certainly down in that area, etc., and I've forgotten the fella's name. Jeff Mould.
Jeff Mould, yes.
Yeah, so tell me about that. That sort of rugby started, he spotted you and just went, ooh.
Well, what happened, obviously, when we went to high school, for some stupid reason, rather than Matchville High was in strength in the middle of the South Sydney, the Rabbitohs, and about 5 or 6 years before we got to Matchville High, Jeff Mould, as a rugby nut, kicked rugby league out of the sports curriculum and introduced rugby union. So when we went to Matchville High, we didn't have a choice. We could have played soccer or football. But, coming from a league background, we were never going to do that. So, we played...
Hang on, coming from a league background, we were never going to do that.
Yeah. We wanted to play league, but we couldn't.
Yeah. Wow, so you just had to play union?
So we had to play union. So we would never play in union to represent Australia or achieve anything. It was a Wednesday sport. So... we played it, obviously, for the years that we were at Matchville High. Then, after a couple of years, we played a Saturday rugby competition. We went to I think, St George area and played junior rugby union there. And then we always played rugby league on the Sunday. And just as things evolved, we were probably good at both. But Gary, in particular, he captained South Sydney League's junior rugby league teams up against our cousin Steve Ella, who was obviously at Parramatta. But over the last couple of years, particularly, we just sort of evolved and started getting selected for rugby teams, and the rest is history.
Did you love it though? You must have loved it. Or what was there a time when it became more than that Wednesday sport thing?
It was always the love of the sport, even rugby league. We enjoyed rugby because, with the rucks and mauls, the game never stopped. And, we made a rule amongst ourselves that we were never going to kick it. Rugby can be the world's greatest game, but could be always be the world's most boring game, depending on the way you wanted to play it. And we made a commitment amongst ourselves that we were never going to get bored. We were going to play running football. And in our backline, the 7 backline players, we had 6 Indigenous players. And our redheaded mate at the back, Greg Stores on the wing, we became known as the black line with the red tip. And that's just the way we played. It was sort of, and it was in the early days. It was a bit of a circus because there wasn't too many Indigenous rugby union players, and I think a lot of the spectators, particularly from the opposition teams, came to watch our games because they were curious to see what these black fellas are like.
And they certainly got shown, didn't they?
Oh yeah, we went through the last couple of years undefeated, smashed everybody. Got selected in Australian schoolboys, 5 of us from Matchville High, and 4 of them were Indigenous.
I'm Michelle Aleksandrovics-Lovegrove. I'm speaking with Mark Ella, and we'll be back after the break.
Land Council members, are your contact details up to date? Have you moved home recently? Got a new post office box? Are you even sure that your address, your phone number, maybe your email address has been entered into the members registry correctly? Well, there's only one way to be certain, and now's the best time to do it. The NSWALC election is coming up soon on November 30. So, having your contact details up to date has never been more important. Contact your LAUC today. It might just save you a lot of hassle tomorrow.
We're speaking with the legendary Mark Ella on the podcast today, and I know you can't see his very handsome face, but he rolled his eyes at me. Oh, God. One thing that's always struck me about you, Mark, from the time I've known you, and is certainly sort of in working in media together, etc. as well, is you've had such a big life, huge life, but you're so you're just really chill. You're very grounded. You're very g'day. Hasn't gone to your head, has it? Oh, not really.
My brothers probably say it has, but but when you come from big families,
it's real, isn't it?
If you get a big head, you'll get hit over the head by one of your older sisters or your older brothers. So we were always very grounded. I mean, we were. You talk about being successful, but I've got 2 brothers, and I've got a younger sister who also achieved so much. I've got my older sisters. They became teachers. They were well educated. They worked hard. From a big family, my mother and father gave everything that they had for their children, and so there wasn't any room for being a big head.
What about, and this was something that I was very curious about, across the sort of late 70s into the early 80s with you. I mean, you were performing at such a high standard. Your playing, was amazing. What do they say? What have we got here? He's going to roll his eyes at me again, 100%. He was the Stradivarius of the flat attack and provided a new dimension to the running game. Ella possessed a near telepathic reading of a game, an uncanny ability to keep the ball alive, and near faultless positional play when in support. That's huge.
Yeah, I wrote it. No, I didn't.
He didn't write it. He just paid a few buckaroonies to the person who did.
That's right.
He was a beautifully balanced runner, blessed with a superb change of pace, who ghosted his way around the field to set up countless memorable tries. I mean, what you were talking about, sort of not having a big head or anything like that, and I hear you. 11 siblings and your parents, and certainly extended family as well. You'd get brought back to earth pretty quickly. What does it feel like though to read that sort of stuff about yourself?
It's nice to read it.
Of course
to hear
it
about
is.
It, but I don't worry about it. Like I don't dwell on it. What I did with my brothers was instinctive. Like I said before, we wanted to enjoy the game rather than sort of being bored on the rugby field. And I guess my role in the position I was in was to actually control the game. And I guess I was a bit lucky. I could analyse the opposition within 10 or 15 minutes. I could change our strategy within those 10 or 15 minutes to make sure that where the weaknesses in the opposition were exploited very, very quickly. When we had the ball, it was always to keep it alive because it was fun. I mean, we played at such a frenetic pace that it was outrageous. And we caught the ball. We hardly dropped the ball. It was like a circus. It was just so much fun. And particularly a lot of all the the non-Indigenous players, which were about 99% of them, just didn't know how to handle it. So we took these guys by surprise. I mean, it wasn't for my brothers. It was Lloydie Walker, who also represented Australia. Kevin Longbottom on the wing. He was just a freak. It wasn't just the three of us. Or there was the 6 or 7 of us that really took the game apart. I remember, playing rugby for Randwick, and I had my number 10 on, so everybody knew it was me. And Glenn had 15, but
Swap.
then Glenn, because I used to do most of the running, I used to sort of swap positions, and even then, Norman May would just, even though Glenn had his 15, he was playing 5'8", and what a great move by Mark Ella. He's a great footballer. He's got 15 on his back, so he knows he's Glenn. Everybody knows it's Glenn, but Norman May didn't care. If it was either Mark or Glenn playing at 5'8" and playing well, that's the way it was.
Yeah. How'd that work with girls? You didn't. You know how they often talk about sort of twins and No.
I had a couple of girls used to say, "You haven't rang me." I said, "What do you mean I haven't rang you?" I said, "I don't know you." I said, "Yes, you do. You know me. You're Mark, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." Well, I said, "Oh, Glenn, that dirty bastard. He's taking out girls and he's using my name."
Just in case things
I'm only
go
joking.
wrong.
He wasn't that bad.
Just in case things go wrong. Oh yeah, Mark called me.
That's right. We used to have a bit of fun. We were cheeky. Little black kids, you're always going to have fun.
Absolutely. In the midst of all of this, though, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but talking about girls, how did you have time? Did you have time for girlfriends or anything? Girls, not really across those years. Not much time.
No, not really. It was
football.
I think we started going out with our girlfriends and wives now, because they were all our girlfriends end up being our wives. Probably in the last year or two at school.
Yeah. Okay.
But before that, no, it was just sport.
Yeah, it was all sport. Special women, though, to I think any not just wives, but husbands too of elite athletes. Performing at such a major level to, be cool with the time, because it's your life. It's a vocation, isn't it?
I know with my wife Kim, we wanted to get married, but I was playing football, so we had no time, and probably Glenn and Gary probably did the same with Kerry and Julie. Their wives, they just had to unfortunately sit back and wait for us to do our thing. When I retired in 1984, I was away for probably 5 months all up. Came back, got married a week later. Because I was actually giving the game away. Glenn and Gary at that stage were married. I wasn't that far behind them, but sport does take up a lot of time, particularly when you reach the high levels. You got to give a lot of effort to it, and unfortunately, the spouses are they've got to wait, and they did, and they're lovely ladies, all three of them.
And it's not only the time too. I guess it's that time includes the training, etc. But what about food? What about eating? That sort of whole lifestyle across that period. Did you follow any sort of particular diet, or
no? We
just
ate
anything
diet,
you wanted?
So, again, growing up at La Perouse, we had a combustion stove. So, Mum used to cook the porridge on the stove. We used to, and then she'd cook baked dinners every Sunday. There was never any rule on what we ate. I mean, when you come from family of 12,
you just eat what
you got, and there wasn't an option of saying, I don't like it. If you didn't like it, you didn't eat. So, Mum and Dad, I guess Mum in particular, we always ate good food, fresh food, and obviously Dad being a fisherman, we always had the freshest fish. So we couldn't complain.
Now, you spent some time, and I know that you've spoken about him in the past, as a Wallabies coach, Alan Jones.
Yep.
I'm just curious because, I've had, as many people have, I guess, years later when he got into media, And certainly when he started working at 2UE, I was a bubby there, and I've got a couple of funny stories about that. But what was he like? What was it like with him as a coach?
He was interesting. He
Yeah.
was very opinionated.
Yeah.
He was very determined for success. I don't think he probably slept 2 or 3 hours a day, a night. Sorry. He was just obsessed with success. So he coached the Wallabies in 1984, the last year I played. We had our relationship was up and down, so to speak. You know, I guess the first thing he did when he took over from Australia with the Wallabies was drop me as captain.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, he was probably done me a big favour because I was probably a little bit blasé at that time. But he knew what it was. We played a test series against New Zealand, the Bledisloe Cup, and we lost that series. And you know, I was pretty upset the way we played in the last test match. And I actually went to Alan Jones and I said, we've got a Grand Slam tour coming up in a couple of months. If you don't make me, well, I'm not captain, I understand that, but if you don't let me control the game, we will not win this. Mm-hmm. And Jonesy could have said, thanks, Mark, bugger off. Mm-hmm. Particularly because we had a young up-and-coming number 10 from Queensland called Michael Liner, who wasn't a bad footballer, so I was probably under pressure myself just to hold my position. But he listened, and you know, I controlled most of the game plan on that tour, and you know, we won the Grand Slam, the only Australian side to have won a Grand Slam, even to this date. And I guess I owe a lot of that to Alan for his faith in my ability.
But if you say he's very focused on success, I know a lot of success is, I mean, it's hard work, it's also strategy. So one thing I do know about him is that he's a very good strategist. So
that's why he doesn't sleep.
Yeah.
You know, he wants to be perfect at everything he does. I don't know how he does it, but he does it, and that's why he's on the big bucks now. And you know, we're struggling, man. Yeah.
That's it. But at least we get to sit in
yes,
lovely
Parramatta and enjoy the coffees.
Do you want another coffee, actually?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind one. That'd be great.
Okay. Well, we'll just go grab a quick cuppa, and we'll be back.
Thanks for listening to the all-new Cuppa and A Yarn podcast, brought to you by the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council. We love being able to bring you the inspirational stories and tales of all the brilliant people making such a key contribution to Aboriginal affairs right across this great state of ours. There's lots more to come. We'd hate for you to miss out, so hit subscribe and be sure to tell your mob. Now, back to today's yarn.
Sorry if I'm rambling on a bit.
No, you're not rambling. I love it. No, it's great. It's really, really good.
All right.
I'd just like to mark on the podcast that Mark Ella has said to me, I'm sorry for rambling.
Thanks, Michelle.
You're a storyteller, don't you think?
I've had an interesting career, so I've done, like I said before, lots and lots, so I could probably talk for hours.
I've got just a little list here, and I was just sort of dividing it up by years, and it's just a so potted history, and it does not include everything. Just looking at it, I just went, God, and then I started feeling really bad about myself. I'm like, holy hell!
I'll have to have a look at that myself.
Yeah, here you go. Have a little look. It's missing a lot, I know, but it was enough of an overview. So, listeners, this is a list. I've just said 77 selected to play in the Australian Rugby schoolboy team, 79-84 Randwick Rugby, blah, 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 with spelling errors. I only got to 2005 and we're in 2019 because then you called me because you were here. So let's pick up on that. Post 2005, you know, the end of my list. You're still chair of the Aboriginal Cricket Association, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Good? Is it good being involved?
It's good to be involved because I used to play, my brothers and I used to play a lot of cricket. I probably, can be involved a little bit more, but you just don't get the opportunity. We're trying to encourage, or Cricket Australia, and trying to encourage more more Indigenous sports people to play cricket. We've got a few at the moment, but there's a lot more talent out there.
So is that something that you keep your eyes peeled here and there for people? You're not really a spotter.
No, I'm not a selector. I'm just sort of like an executive that's trying, help the funding and obviously make sure that Indigenous communities get the right training and things like that. I don't know if you noted down there that I took an Aboriginal cricket side to England in 1988.
I did read that you actually did that.
Yeah, well, I went to a meeting and walked out of that meeting as chairman of the Aboriginal cricket, as you normally do.
This is what happens when you can't say no, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And then we obviously we took a team across to England, Wales, Jersey for 5 weeks. It was just unbelievable. Took the guys to Buckingham Palace.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we played at Lords, the Holy Grail of Test cricket. I remember we even watched the West Indies on the fourth day defeat England at Lords. We were obviously spectators, and I said, okay, let's catch the bus. And the guy said, no, Mark, we're going to meet the West Indies. I said, how the hell are we going to meet the West Indies? They've just beaten England at Lords on the fourth day. We are not going to meet the West Indies cricket team. He said, yeah, but you're Mark Ella. You can ask him. And I went, oh, Christ, okay.
So you did?
So we went, knocked on the door. They were all lined up. All these black fellas were lined up behind me. Knocked on the door. The security guy come down and said, what do you want? I said, I want to talk to the West Indies team manager. He said, okay. He had a look, and all these Aboriginal kids were behind me. And so the manager come down, and I said, introduced myself and who we were. And I said, what are the chances of coming up and meet the West Indies cricket team? And he looked at it and said, yeah, man, come up. And we were up there for a couple of hours sort of talking and meeting the players. And what I should have guessed, because a lot of the professional cricket in those days was basically all in England. And so a lot of the West Indies lived in Clive Lloyd and Viv Richards and Malcolm Marshall, all those guys. And so, we're getting signatures off of them, and they wanted me to. I was signing signatures for them because they also watched their rugby. It was crazy.
Yeah. Now I've actually got a photo here. So people, I've got printed off a photo for Mark of yourself, and so that's Courtney Walsh.
Courtney Walsh, yes.
So they're both here, both looking very dapper, holding boomerangs. That would have been in Australia though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in 1995.
Oh hell, okay.
Again, part of my long history of sport. In 1995, I had a marketing company, and I got a phone call from the West Indies, from Jamaica, and saying that, hey man, we need a sponsor, Mark. Can you help us? And I went, yeah, maybe. And I thought they were joking, but they were the real McCoy. They'd rang all the way from the West Indies to me to look after them, to try and get a sponsor. So I rang John Singleton, who was a friend of mine. Singer then got into KFC. And so I then became the commercial manager of the West Indies on their tour of Australia in 1995. And that alone was some of the funniest things that I've ever done. Besides, doing the run, doing the KFC run when they were here, I had to go get boxes of KFC and drop them outside their room, and then arguing with the manager Clive Lloyd about Curtly Ambrose, wouldn't say, Windy's kids are Whitby's kids, and so I used to, at lunchtime in the Sydney Test match, I'm arguing with one of the greatest cricketers ever about one of their players who will refuse to do what was right.
Yeah.
And so we got there, and I got a lot of the young production assistants, lovely young girls, to tell Curtly Ambrose how lovely he was and whatever. And then the first take...
You butted him up.
The first take, Windy's kids were Whitby's kids.
Oh.
And so we got around it. But yeah, so it was great. So I really enjoyed travelling around Australia with the West Indies cricket team.
How long were they in town for?
Oh, probably about 3 months.
Yeah. It would have been a while.
Yeah.
And you were clearly introducing them to
Yes.
a bit of culture. Did you? So they're here with their brandishing boomerangs. Did you throw them?
Yes.
You did.
Yes, we threw them. Yes.
I'm Michelle Aleksandrovics-Lovegrove. I'm here speaking with rugby legend Mark Ella. We're now in 2019. Life goes on. How long have you been in media for now? Just wondering. It's been a while, eh?
I started in media when I retired, so probably in about 1985.
Oh, right.
So I started working for the ABC with Gordon Bray, calling the rugby, which was fun. And then probably a year later, I started writing for the Australian. That was in 1986. So what's that? 20, 30 years virtually. So, and I'm still writing.
You're still writing.
Then obviously from 8 years ago working for NLTV, which is still great. So yeah, I've been in and around the media for a long time now.
How does that sort of translate? I mean, you get to look at sports you love, etc., through a different lens now. What's that like?
It was good for about the first 30 years, but I'm probably getting a little bit older now.
Yeah.
So sport is still important, but it's not the be end.
Sure.
Where I used to, love my rugby league. I used to watch every ball bowled in cricket. I probably do it every now and again now. So, my time at NITV, I was executive producer of shows like with Ernie Dingo, cultural shows, Cuppa and A Yarn, and all obviously important Indigenous events. So it's been a great experience, particularly coming from sport into the media. It's there was a natural fit, and sometimes you may not be the greatest cameraman or greatest editor or director. My role is to manage people, and that's what I've done all my life.
Exactly, and I think people sometimes may forget, I think, some of the skills that you perfect as a player, and then you sort of naturally move into other areas as well. What do they say? Translates well into other areas. So, I'd imagine for you, like, it's sort of mentorship and inspiration.
Well, it is. I mean, sport did do a lot for me, and you talk about mentoring, and that's exactly what it's like. You've got to work with people. You've got to understand their problems. You've got to understand what it takes to make them better players or better employees. They're very similar.
Now, I know we talked about this a little earlier, and I know I'm just going to put myself up there for the punishment. You know where I'm going?
Yeah, I think I do. It's called Israel Folau. What do you want to know about Israel?
Well, look, I understand. I know, that they're in the Fair Work Commission now. It's a situation that's going to go on for ages. I mean, we talked about it before. Please don't be cranky with me.
What's happening now is ruining rugby. I mean, rugby union in this country was going backwards anyway, but now it's on a free fall, basically. Israel Folau has got his rights, I guess, and he's obviously a devout Christian, but there's some things you can't say. You can't bring the game in your repute, and he's been warned once, not to I guess say what he's been saying, and now he's come out again, and it's just sort of dragging on. This will go on forever, and it'll cost everybody millions of dollars. But the biggest loser, I guess, will be Australian Rugby Union, because Israel is definitely divided. The fan base, those that are Christians, those that are not necessarily non-Christians, but just those that probably just want to get on. They want to enjoy their sport. And now, in terms of rugby, that can't happen.
I've seen it move from about freedom of speech to religion to a mix of both. Someone's right to freedom of speech, and that's not just about Israel Folau either. It's about, when does freedom of speech become not that? It's very interesting in this day of social media, where you'll say something, and then depending on who you are.
It's a fine line, and particularly with his profile, you're going to gain interest. People are going to say something. They're going to respond, and it's like I said. I mean, I read the tweets, and some of them are outrageous, some of them are crazy, a lot of them are vindictive. It's just divided the Australian community, literally.
For you, in your entire career, I mean, I did a bit of Googling. I mean, I know you as Mark, and to be honest, I'd never really done an internet search on you before.
Yep.
I know you've probably had your controversial moments and all that sort of stuff, but you've never been someone who has, from what I can see, behaved with respect and grace, pretty much, or spoken about anybody in a...
Yeah, well, that was, I guess, our upbringing.
Yeah.
You've got to respect everybody, and everybody's got an opinion. I think my only real dig that I had was probably Alan Jones. And that was, right. I learned very quickly that you don't do that, you don't do it twice.
Nah.
and thankfully Alan put up with me in those early days, but now we're good friends.
That's good to hear. And look, as far as Folau aside and what's happening with the game and how people are feeling at the moment, what about the rest of the year as far as that goes in terms of rugby in this country?
Well, we've got a World Cup coming up soon.
Yep.
We've got a coach that needs help. We got players that need help. So I'm not saying rugby's in total disarray, but I don't think it's far from it. So we just got to get our act together. We just got to knuckle down and work hard. We've got 5 test matches before the World Cup. We need to do reasonably well. The unfortunate part is I don't think we know our best team, and that's always been an issue with me, because I think Michael and I played together at Randwick. I get on pretty well with him, but he's just got to stick with his best 15 or best 23 players, and hopefully that they can deliver the goods.
Disarray is a strong word. You said close to.
Well, it is close to disarray. If you talk to any rugby fan, are they happy with the state of Australian rugby? Not even talking about Israel Folau.
Yeah.
I'd say 7 out of 10 would probably say that they're not happy. Whether we got the right coaches, whether we got the right players, whether we're playing the right style of football, whether we got the right selectors, everything's questionable. There's not one player who would walk into the Wallabies side. In my day, there were probably half a dozen players that would have walked in, without hesitation. Now, I think the coach and the selectors will probably look at every position and hopefully pick the right player. Where before, as I said before, half a dozen would have been the key to winning, the key to the core of the Wallabies, and then the other 9 or 10 would be players that you hope could deliver.
Like with yourself, I've got to ask the question though, and he's probably going to roll his eyes at me. Do you kick a ball about at all?
No.
No.
I watch rugby on television. I probably don't go to too many live games, although I'll probably go to a couple of the test matches, but I'm not as active or enthusiastic about rugby as I used to be. Well,
life moves on. You're at a different point in your life. Are you a grandfather?
No, I've got a daughter that's getting married in Sweden next June, and a son
congratulations.
who's still looking for a girlfriend. He'll find one sooner or later.
Yeah, he'll find someone. He'll just say, my dad's Mark Ella.
These days I'll say Mark who?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. You'll be surprised. Yeah. You'll be surprised how many younger generation who actually aren't rugby fans as such know your name. I'm just telling you. So other things replace that. Your career's moved in the media direction, has been for some time now. You're still living in the beautiful Central Coast. So what do? You kick back on weekends. Do you garden? Do you play golf? Do you...
More gardening, more practical things. I guess I'm making up for a lot of lost time. Like my wife, which I spent most of my life away, at least half of it, sort of doing other crazy things. So I'm content now. I don't. My wife thinks that I'm antisocial because I don't like talking to people, and she's probably right to a certain extent. I try and avoid, particularly on weekends when it's my spare time. I just rather spend it with her and friends.
Mate, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And it's just really lovely hearing you, sharing some of your life, and particularly about the mullet. I'm a mullet person.
I'm a mullet, but we used to have the long hair with the mullets.
Yeah.
We had everything.
We had the mullets, we ate the mullets. So we have Coorong mullets down from where I'm from.
Yeah.
So I get very jealous when I see pictures of my relatives cooking up Coorong mullet down there. I'm just like, damn it, I'm in Sydney,
Yeah.
But anyway, look, thanks, Mark.
Thanks,
and
Michelle. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. See ya.
Right.
You can do Nayania Baria, Nayania Manania, Manania. You can do Nayania Baria, Nayania Manania.
From the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, this is the A Cuppa and A Yarn podcast.